I'm not the kind of person who usually shares stuff like this online, but what happened to me a few months ago still messes with my head, and maybe putting it out there will help me sleep better. I was in the middle of moving from Ohio to North Carolina, driving a big rental van by myself with all my stuff packed tight in the back. It was late, like 2:30 in the morning, kind of late, and I'd been driving all day completely drained. I pulled into one of those 24-hour rest areas off the highway, the kind that's always half-lit and has maybe 2 cars parked way off in the distance. I just needed to pee and maybe stretch for 5 minutes before getting back on the road. Nothing felt off at first. I parked under a light, locked the doors, and made a beeline for the bathroom. When I came back, that's when I noticed him. A guy crouched down by the front right tire of my van, like he was checking something. He looked like a mechanic or a trucker. Heavy jacket, ball cap, jeans dirty like he'd been on the road too. I stopped walking, kind of frozen. He didn't look up at me, just kept fiddling with the wheel. I called out like, "Hey, everything okay?" And that's when he stood up real quick and said something about my tire looking low. But it didn't sit right with me. I had literally just checked the pressure before leaving that morning, and the van wasn't leaning or anything. I mumbled a thanks and told him I'd take it from there. He gave me a look I still can't explain, like he was annoyed I'd interrupted something, then walked off toward the trees, disappearing into the dark. I got in the van fast and locked the doors. My heart was pounding even though I kept telling myself maybe he really was just trying to help. But there was this gut feeling, like something was off, like I'd interrupted something I wasn't supposed to see. I sat there for a while, scanning the rearview mirrors and the shadows around the lot. Nothing moved. Eventually, I started the engine and got back on the highway, hoping I'd just scared myself for no reason. The road was quiet, almost too quiet, and the farther I got from the rest area, the more that feeling of unease grew. I couldn't shake it. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see headlights following me, but there was nothing. Just me, the road, and that heavy feeling in my chest. A couple hours later, not far from the North Carolina border, the van started acting weird. First the headlights dimmed for a few seconds, like a flicker. Then the dashboard lights started flashing randomly, and the radio, which wasn't even on, let out this high-pitched static for half a second. I thought it might be a battery thing, but the van was practically new and had been fine all day. I pulled off at the next exit, which had one of those old gas stations, the kind that looks abandoned even when it's open. I parked under the flickering overhead lights and went inside to ask if someone could take a quick look or if they knew a nearby mechanic. The guy behind the counter barely looked up and said there was no one until morning. That's when I stepped back outside and saw him again, the same guy from the rest area, leaning against the side of the gas station like he'd been waiting. My stomach dropped. I remember just standing there for a second, trying to process it. He didn't move, didn't smile, didn't say anything, just stared at me like we both knew something I didn't want to admit. I pretended not to recognize him and walked slowly back to the van, keys clenched in my fist. I didn't even check the engine or look at the tires. I just wanted to leave. As I got in, I glanced in the side mirror and saw him walking toward the back of the van, casual, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I locked the doors again and started the engine, praying it wouldn't stall. Luckily, it turned over and I sped off, tires screeching a little as I pulled out of that gas station lot. I kept driving, now way more awake than I wanted to be. My hands were shaking on the wheel, and I kept checking every mirror like I couldn't stop myself. I was in the middle of nowhere, with just long stretches of trees on either side and no other cars around. I started second-guessing everything. Had he followed me? Was he already at the gas station waiting? Or had he somehow gotten ahead of me? And why the hell had he been messing with my van in the first place? I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone, but of course, no signal. Just one bar that disappeared the moment I tried to make a call. I remember that moment so vividly because that's when the van's lights flickered again, and the engine gave this weird hiccup like it was about to die. I was terrified it would stop in the middle of that dark road, and I'd be completely alone, or worse, not alone at all. I finally saw a sign for another rest stop, and figured I'd pull in just to regroup, and maybe try my phone again. This one was smaller, older, and not nearly as well lit. There was only one other car there, an old sedan with fogged-up windows. I parked near the vending machines, trying to keep close to the light. The second I stepped out, I noticed the same weird feeling in the air, like everything was just too still. Not peaceful, but dead quiet, like the silence was waiting for something. I didn't go far, just stretched my legs a bit, paced near the van. And then I saw the sedan's driver's side door was slightly open. Just cracked. No one inside. That was enough. I jumped back in the van and locked the doors again. I wasn't going to wait around to find out if I was being paranoid or not. As soon as I got back on the road, the van's lights went full dim for maybe 3 seconds, then snapped back on. The dashboard started glitching again, same as before. And then, without warning, every light in the van shut off for a full second. Just blackness. The engine kept running, but for that second, everything else went dead. When the lights came back, I swear to God, I saw headlights in the rearview mirror, just one pair far back, but there. And they stayed there, no matter how fast or slow I went. It wasn't like a regular car behind me, switching lanes or closing in. It kept its distance, always the same, just far enough that I couldn't make out the vehicle, but close enough that I knew I wasn't alone on that road anymore. After maybe 15 minutes of that car tailing me, I saw another gas station coming up and figured I had to stop again. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't keep driving like that. I needed to see if I could lose him, or at least confirm if I was really being followed. I pulled in quick, cut the engine, and waited, watching the road. Nothing. No headlights passed, no sign of anyone. I started to think maybe I imagined it, but just as I was about to get out, I noticed something in the driver's side mirror. A silhouette. Someone standing behind the van, just outside the reach of the station's overhead light. I couldn't see a face, just the outline of a man. Same build, same posture. He wasn't moving, just standing there, like he was waiting for me to do something. I didn't. I sat frozen, watching him through the mirror, heart racing like crazy. After what felt like forever, he stepped back into the dark and vanished. Just like that. No sound, no footsteps. I waited 10 more minutes before starting the van and tearing out of there. I didn't even look back. I drove the last stretch with the gas pedal nearly floored, not caring about speed limits or cameras, just wanting to get to somewhere with people, lights, anything. When I finally saw the first signs for Charlotte, I felt like I could breathe again. I hit the city limits just as the sun was starting to rise. By then, my van was running fine again. No flickering, no static, nothing. Like none of it ever happened. I dropped the van off later that morning at the rental place, still trying to act normal, even though I felt like I was crawling out of my own skin. I asked the guy at the counter if there had been any reported issues with that model. Electrical stuff, anything weird. He just shrugged and said no, everything checked out fine. I didn't mention the man. I didn't say a word about what had happened. I don't even know how I would have explained it without sounding completely insane. But here's the part that gets to me the most. When I finally got to my new apartment and started unpacking, I found one of the boxes in the very back. One I know for a fact I packed tight and sealed, slightly open. And inside, tucked between 2 books, was a crumpled piece of paper I'd never seen before. It just said, "You should get your tires checked." That's it. I still don't know who he was or what the hell he wanted. I don't know if he was following me the whole way, if he messed with the van back at the rest stop, or how he even got that note into my stuff. I never saw him again after that night. Nothing else strange has happened since. But sometimes, especially when I'm driving late at night on an empty road, I catch myself checking the mirrors a little too often, half expecting to see that same pair of headlights in the distance. It's like whatever that was just stopped. No explanation, no closure. Just this feeling that something wasn't right, and that maybe, somehow, it still isn't. I still can't talk about that trip without Meu Estómago virar. It was supposed to be just me and Jake hitting the road before senior year started. Nothing crazy, just a last-minute escape. We left early in the morning, took the back roads through some rural parts of Oregon to make it more scenic. No GPS, just a printed map and good vibes. Around late afternoon, we were somewhere past this tiny town. Can't even remember the name now. When this beat-up, dark-colored SUV pulled up behind us, flashing lights mounted on the dashboard. The guy inside was wearing plain clothes, but he had this badge hanging from his neck and waved us to pull over like he was in charge. Something about him felt off, but we were in the middle of nowhere, no cell signal, and the guy was insisting he was an off-duty officer doing random traffic checks. He didn't ask for my license or anything, just leaned into the window, looked us both over, and said there'd been a report of some suspicious activity on the highway, and that he needed us to follow him to a checkpoint a few miles off. I remember the way he said it. It wasn't like a request. It was flat, cold, like a command. Jake asked if we could just get whatever this was done right there, but the guy's expression changed quick. His eyes narrowed, and he muttered something about us not wanting to cause trouble. That part hit weird. I mean, who says that? But again, no signal, no other cars, middle of nowhere. Against every instinct I had, I nodded and started the car. We followed him. The road he turned onto wasn't even paved. It was this narrow dirt path with deep ruts and overgrown brush scraping the sides of the car. It got quieter the deeper we went, like nature itself had gone still. No more cars, no houses, not even power lines. Just trees pressing in from all sides. The further we followed, the more I could feel that sick pressure in my chest, like we were driving straight into something we weren't supposed to see. Jake kept glancing over at me with this tight look, like he wanted to say, "Turn around." But neither of us said it out loud. It felt like the wrong move might set something off. I kept hoping there'd be some official building at the end of it all, some explanation that made sense. After about 15 minutes, we pulled up to this fenced-in property that looked completely abandoned. No signs, no lights, nothing that said checkpoint. Just a rusted-out gate left half open and a bunch of junk cars scattered across a patchy dirt lot. At the back, there was a large wooden structure, part barn, part shed, barely standing. But what really hit me was the people. There were maybe 5 or 6 of them just standing there, dead still, staring at us like they'd been waiting. Not one of them smiled. Not one of them moved. The guy we followed got out of his SUV and waved for us to get out too. That was the moment everything in me screamed to run. I turned to Jake and whispered, "This is wrong, man. This is really wrong." His face was pale. He just nodded slowly, and my hands started to shake. We stepped out of the car because, honestly, we didn't know what else to do. The guy didn't say a word, just gestured toward the barn-looking building like we were supposed to go in. I noticed then that none of the other people there were in any kind of uniform. They were all in work clothes, dirty jeans, old flannel shirts, a couple of them barefoot. One woman had this massive stain on her sleeve, like dried blood, and she didn't even try to hide it. Jake muttered under his breath, "What the hell is this place?" And I could barely swallow. Every step I took felt like I was walking toward something final. My gut was screaming that we shouldn't be there, that we needed to get back in the car and floor it. But it was like my body stopped listening to reason. The man who brought us there finally spoke again, but not to us. He turned to the group and said something I couldn't fully hear. Just a few words, maybe a name. But whatever it was made one of the guys nod and disappear into the shed. I wanted to turn and run so bad, but it was like we were surrounded, even though they hadn't moved. They were just standing there, but it felt like a trap, like if we tried anything, they'd close in. I kept looking around for something, anything, that would give us a way out. But all I saw were empty fields, rusted tools, and a whole lot of silence. Jake grabbed my arm then, hard, and whispered, "We need to go. Now." That's when the guy who'd gone into the shed came back out, carrying something wrapped in tarp. He was dragging the thing behind him like it was heavy. The tarp was stained dark in places, and the shape underneath looked wrong, like a body but twisted somehow. I didn't want to believe it, but the second I saw Jake's face go pale again, I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. The rest of the group didn't even react. They just stood there, eyes fixed on us. I kept telling myself maybe it's just some gear or hunting equipment, but deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The guy unwrapped just a corner of the tarp, and whatever was inside had skin. I saw it, pale, grayish, bloated. My legs nearly gave out. Jake yanked me back toward the car, full panic mode. We didn't say a word, we just turned and bolted. I heard shouting behind us, but I couldn't even process it. My heart was hammering so loud in my ears it drowned out everything else. We threw ourselves into the car, and I didn't even wait for the door to close properly before slamming it into reverse. Tires kicked up dust and rocks, and the car fishtailed, but somehow we got enough grip to turn around. I glanced back once and saw 2 of them running after us on foot. One of them had something in his hand, long, thin metal, but I couldn't tell what it was. I just pressed the gas and didn't let up. We didn't stop driving for a long time. At some point, the dirt road turned back into pavement, and even then, I kept pushing the car like they were still behind us. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep the wheel steady. Jake was looking out the back window the whole time, whispering stuff like, "Are they coming?" Or "Was that a car?" over and over. We didn't talk about what we saw. I think both of us were too afraid to say it out loud, like if we named it, it'd make it real. Eventually we hit a town, some tiny place with a gas station and a diner, and pulled in. We just sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes in silence before even moving. Inside the gas station, we tried to act normal, but the cashier kept giving us weird looks. We must have looked like hell, sweating, dirty, paranoid. I asked if there was a police station nearby, but they didn't and the guy pointed down the road without even asking why. We debated going there, reporting it. But what would we even say? Some guy pretending to be a cop led us to a property full of weirdos and possibly a dead body? Who would believe that? And even if they did, that place was out in the middle of nowhere. No addresses, no signs. We couldn't even retrace our steps if we wanted to. That was the worst part. It felt like we had escaped something real and dangerous, but had no proof it even happened. We ended up not reporting it. I still don't know if that was the right call. We just got back on the highway and kept driving until we were hours away. Neither of us talked much the rest of the trip. I don't think we even listened to music. It was like that place had drained something out of us. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what would have happened if we hadn't run. If we had walked into that shed. If we had stayed quiet and just done what they wanted. There are too many ways it could have ended, and none of them feel like something you come back from. What keeps me up most nights is knowing how easy it was for that guy to do what he did. No badge number, no patrol car, just a fake light and a stare that didn't blink. To this day, we haven't found anything about that property. We tried looking it up, retracing the route on Google Maps, even asked around online, but nothing. No one we've talked to ever heard of a checkpoint like that out there. It's like the place doesn't exist. But I know what we saw. Jake knows too. We don't talk about it anymore, haven't really talked since graduation, honestly, but I know he remembers. I still think about those people standing there, dead still, like they were waiting for something. And I think about the tarp. Whatever was inside it. I wish I could say we made it out, because we were smart or lucky. But the truth? I think they let us go. I've never posted anything like this before, but what happened to me that morning has been stuck in my head ever since. I'm a nurse, and I had just finished a 12-hour night shift at the hospital I work at. Anyone who's done night shifts knows how out of it you feel afterward, like you're walking through fog. It was around 7:10 a.m., still kind of dark, that weird in-between time when the sun hasn't fully come up. I headed down to the hospital's underground parking garage, and it was pretty much empty. Maybe 3 cars scattered around, everything super quiet. That's when I noticed a man standing by one of the concrete pillars near Section C. He had his back to me, leaning forward slightly, not moving. At first, I figured he was just a visitor who had gotten turned around or was looking for his car, but something felt off. He was wearing a gray hoodie, and even from a distance, I could tell he was shaking, like physically trembling. I couldn't tell if he was cold or having some kind of episode, but it didn't look right. As I walked past him, he turned his head a little, not all the way, just enough for me to catch a glimpse of his face. And I swear, his eyes looked blank. Like totally checked out, like nobody was home behind them. It made my skin crawl. I didn't say anything, just kept my head down and got to my SUV as quickly as I could. I unlocked it, got in, and tried to shake it off. I was exhausted, and honestly, I just wanted to get home and crash. When I backed out of the spot, I glanced in the rearview mirror, and that's when I noticed the rear window on the passenger side was slightly open. Not much, just enough to make me second-guess whether I had left it like that the day before. At first, I didn't think too much about the window. I was tired, probably forgot to roll it up all the way. I figured maybe I cracked it open during my last shift to air the car out or something. But the thing is, I'm usually really careful about locking up, especially since we had a couple break-ins in the garage a few months back. As I pulled out, I looked in the rear view again and tried to shake that uneasy feeling, like something was watching me. It was stupid, I told myself, just nerves after a long shift, and maybe that weird guy back there had just gotten under my skin more than I realized. I even laughed a little, trying to make it feel smaller than it did, but I still rolled the window up right away and locked all the doors again, just in case. I started the drive home, and the first 20 minutes were uneventful. I took the usual route, not much traffic since it was still early. Sun was starting to rise, that kind of hazy golden light coming through the trees. I had my windows cracked a bit for fresh air and was listening to the radio, zoning out like I always do after night shifts. That's when I noticed a car behind me, a red sedan, kind of beat up looking, tailing me a little close. At first, I didn't think much of it, but after a few turns, I realized they were sticking to me, not in a super aggressive way, but just consistent. When I slowed down, they slowed down. When I changed lanes, they did too. I started to feel that tension building in my chest, that tight, crawling kind of anxiety where you know something's not right, but you don't want to jump to conclusions. I finally pulled into a gas station, thinking maybe the guy would just pass and I could calm myself down. I parked near the front, where there were people around, and waited. The red car pulled in too, a few spots over. That's when I started to really freak out. I watched through the side mirror as a man got out, mid-40s maybe, baseball cap, flannel shirt, and started walking toward my SUV. I cracked my window just a little, and before I could say anything, he held up his hands like he didn't want to scare me and said, "I don't want to freak you out, but I think someone might be in the back of your car." My stomach dropped. I asked him what he meant, and he said that when we were on the road, he thought he saw movement in my cargo area. He wasn't sure at first, but then he noticed the rear window was slightly open, and that's when he got a bad feeling. I didn't even want to look. I just sat there frozen, trying to process what he was saying. A million thoughts hit me at once. Was he messing with me? Was this some kind of setup? But something about the way he said it, it didn't feel like a lie. He genuinely looked concerned. He told me to stay in the car while he walked around to the back. I locked the doors again and gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I kept trying to look in the rearview mirror, but the angle wasn't great. I couldn't see much behind the headrests. The man slowly approached the back of my SUV, then crouched slightly, trying to look through the rear glass. And then he froze. He didn't say anything, just stood there staring. After what felt like forever, he backed away and walked to my window again, this time more serious. He just said, "Call the cops. Now." I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. I remember my voice cracking. When I told the dispatcher, I thought someone might be hiding in the back of my car. The operator told me to stay in the vehicle, keep the doors locked, and wait for an officer. I stayed on the line, trying not to cry, eyes flicking between the mirrors and the guy standing a few feet from my window. He didn't say much, just kept glancing at the back of the SUV like he was trying to keep his cool. A few minutes later, though it felt like an hour, a patrol car pulled into the lot. I could have cried out of sheer relief. 2 officers stepped out and walked toward us while I stayed inside, completely frozen, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. One officer asked me to slowly step out and stand by their car while they checked the vehicle. The other went straight to the back. I stood there, barely breathing, hugging myself as I watched them open the tailgate. At first, nothing happened. Just silence and the faint hum of morning traffic in the background. Then the officer suddenly jumped back, hand on his gun, and yelled something I couldn't hear. They both moved fast after that. I couldn't see exactly what was going on, but there was shouting, some scuffling, and then they pulled someone out. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. It was a man, pale, dirty clothes, completely wild-eyed like some kind of feral animal. He was curled up under the trunk cover, tucked down behind the back seat. I don't know how the hell I hadn't heard or seen anything when I got in. It made my skin crawl. The cops cuffed him right there on the pavement. He didn't resist much, just kept looking around with this dazed, empty expression, like he didn't even fully understand what was happening. One of the officers came over to talk to me, while the other stayed with the guy. He asked if I knew him. Of course I didn't. He explained that the man had no ID on him, wouldn't give a name, and wasn't saying anything coherent. He looked like he hadn't slept or eaten in days. I kept asking how he got in my car, and the officer said the back window had been forced open, just enough for someone to slip a hand in and unlock the back door manually. The terrifying part? They thought he had probably climbed in while I was still in the garage, back when I saw that other guy standing near the pillar. I felt physically sick. What messes me up the most is that I felt something was off. That split-second chill when I saw the guy in the hoodie, that instinct that told me to get out fast. But I didn't realize it was already too late. I don't know if the man I saw was connected, or if it was just a horrifying coincidence, but either way, someone got into my car without me noticing. I drove for almost half an hour with him back there, just lying still waiting. For what? I don't even want to think about. The officers said it was possible he was mentally unstable or on something, but they couldn't say for sure. They took him away and advised me to file a full report, which I did, though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely write my name. I didn't drive that SUV again for weeks. Just the idea of someone being in there with me that whole time, it still gives me chills. I kept replaying everything in my head for days after. Every little detail. That weird guy in the hoodie, was he a lookout? Was he trying to warn me? Or was he just another lost soul wandering around at the wrong time? I'll never know. What really haunts me, though, is how normal everything felt until it didn't. How I was this close to just going home, falling asleep, and never even realizing someone had been inches from me the whole time. I think about what could have happened if that guy in the red car hadn't followed me, hadn't said anything. It's terrifying how much we take for granted, locking doors, being alert, noticing small things like a cracked window. I never used to double-check the back seat before driving. Now I check it 3 times. What scares me most is the randomness. There was no rhyme or reason to it. No dramatic ending, no clear explanation. The guy didn't attack me. He didn't speak. He just waited back there. For what? I'll never understand. After the report was filed, I never heard anything else from the police. They didn't find out who he was, and as far as I know, he didn't have any record. He just disappeared into the system, or maybe not. Maybe he was just let go. I still think about that morning every time I park somewhere alone. I don't care how tired I am after work now. I check everything. I listen to that gut feeling, no matter how small. Because whatever was going to happen that day, it felt like something had been about to go very, very wrong. And then, just like that, it stopped. Like it ended before it even began. And I still don't know why. I know this is going to sound like one of those fake creepypasta stories, but I swear on everything, this really happened to me. I've never told anyone outside of my sister and one close friend, and even they still think I was just overtired or imagining things. But I wasn't. I remember every second of that night, and every time I think about it, I get that same cold pit in my stomach. I was 16, bored, and like every dumb teenager, I thought sneaking out to mess around with friends was peak rebellion. There was this old playground on the edge of town, mostly broken stuff, some graffiti, the kind of place people joked was haunted. We used to go there just to hang out without adults bugging us. That night, it was just supposed to be a chill hangout. Everything was fine until around 1 a.m., when my friend Jordan, who had driven us, said he had to leave early because his mom was blowing up his phone. I wasn't ready to head home, so I told him it was cool. I'd just call my sister to come get me. I'd done it before. She didn't love it, but she always came through. So he bailed, and I stayed behind, chilling by this rusted-out slide while texting my sister to see how long she'd take. She said she'd leave in 10 minutes, and I remember thinking I'd just walk over to the curb by the road and wait there. It was quiet, dead quiet. No cars, no wind, nothing. Just that kind of heavy silence that makes you feel like you're being watched, even if there's no one around. So, I'm standing by the curb, kind of zoning out, just scrolling through my phone to kill time, when I get that weird feeling. You know, like the back of your neck tightens a bit, like your body knows something's off before your brain does. I look up, just instinctively, and that's when I see someone on the sidewalk about a block away. Not walking fast, not even heading in my direction at first. Just pacing slow, like back and forth, but stopping every now and then. I remember thinking it was weird that anyone else would be out that late around here, especially in this part of town where nothing happens. But whatever, maybe they were just on the phone or something, right? I look back at my phone for maybe a minute, max. When I look up again, that person is definitely closer. Still pacing, but now they're heading kind of diagonally, like toward where I was. It wasn't like they were power walking or running or anything, just that same slow-ass pace. But the distance between us had shrunk by a lot, and it made my stomach flip. I tried not to freak myself out. I even told myself, maybe they just live nearby. Maybe it's nothing. But the more I looked at them, the more it felt off. They weren't walking normal. It was stiff, like their knees didn't bend right or something. Like every step was forced. I started to feel kinda exposed just standing there on the sidewalk, so I backed up and leaned against the passenger side of my sister's car. I remember checking the time. Only 3 minutes had passed since I texted her, but it felt like forever. I kept glancing up, and each time, that person was a little closer. Not running, not doing anything dramatic, just slowly, closing the gap. It was so unnerving because they never broke eye contact. That's what really got me. I couldn't see the face clearly, not in the dark and from that distance, but I could tell their head was always turned toward me. No matter how they were walking, left, right, straight, they were facing me. I started trying to act casual, like maybe I was overthinking it, but I also made sure to unlock the car door just in case. I was telling myself I'd get in if they crossed the street. That was my line. They were still on the opposite sidewalk, so technically they hadn't done anything. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. You don't just stand around at almost 1:30 a.m. pacing in the dark, staring at someone. My heart was pounding by then. I kept refreshing the messages to see if my sister had said anything else, but she hadn't. I even called her, but it rang twice and went to voicemail. I looked up again, and I swear they were now less than half a block away. Same pace, same posture, still staring. My brain was trying to rationalize it, but my body was already in fight or flight mode. I didn't want to panic and lock myself in the car just yet, but every instinct I had was screaming to get the hell out of there. I stepped toward the driver's side and opened the door just enough to slide in. I didn't close it all the way, just rested it against my leg like I was just sitting there. I didn't want to make it obvious I was scared, but I was gripping the keys so tight my knuckles were white. I tried calling my sister again, voicemail. That's when I looked up one more time and realized they had crossed the street. No sound. I didn't hear footsteps, no crunch of gravel, nothing. Just they were now on my side of the road, still walking slow, like they had all the time in the world. I couldn't make out the face at all. It was like the shadows clung to their features no matter how close they got. But I could see the outline of the body clearly now, tall, skinny, almost too skinny. And they were wearing something long, like a coat or jacket that moved weird when they walked, like it was stiff or too heavy. At that point, I was fully inside the car, doors shut, windows locked. I hadn't started the engine yet, because part of me didn't want to look like I was freaking out. Sounds dumb now, I know. But I just sat there, staring, trying to figure out what this person wanted. They were maybe 20 meters away now, and then they stopped. Just stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, facing me, doing absolutely nothing. Just standing there like they were waiting for something. I wanted to believe it was just some random weirdo, but the way they stood still like that, it was seriously off. Everything was silent. Not a single sound. And that just made it worse. Then came the worst part. The guy slowly raised one of his hands and waved. Like really slowly. It wasn't a normal wave. It looked mechanical, like he didn't even know how to do it properly. That's when the real fear kicked in. The kind that paralyzes you, that makes your whole body go cold. There was no way that gesture meant anything good. I started the car immediately, and when the headlights hit more of his body, I realized his face. His face looked wrong. Not that I could see it clearly, but it was like the place where his mouth should have been was lower than it should be. Or maybe it wasn't even there. I couldn't really focus. I just smacked the steering wheel and started honking like a reflex, hoping my sister or someone would hear it. I should have just driven off the moment I saw that weird wave, but my brain completely locked up. I didn't know if it was safer to leave or to stay put, like maybe if I moved, I'd provoke something. It sounds stupid now, but in that moment, I felt like every choice mattered. While I sat there frozen, the figure started walking again. Same slow pace, no rush, but this time heading straight for my car. No more diagonal movement, no more pacing. Just a straight line, eyes locked on me. That was enough. I threw the car into drive and floored it. My tires slipped a bit on the gravel, and I nearly clipped the curb turning out, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be gone. As I sped off and checked the rearview mirror, I saw him again, just standing there in the middle of the street now. Not chasing me, not yelling, just standing completely still, watching me leave. And right before I turned the last corner, I swear he lifted his hand again for one final slow, robotic wave. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel. I don't even remember the drive back clearly. When my sister finally answered my texts, I was already pulling into the driveway. Turns out she had fallen asleep and didn't hear her phone. I didn't tell her the whole story that night. I could barely talk. I just told her I changed my mind and drove myself back. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed with the lights on, trying to make sense of what I saw. I kept telling myself it was just some weirdo messing with me, that maybe I let my imagination run wild. But that's the thing, I know what I felt. I know the way that silence settled around me like a weight, how unnatural that walk was, how wrong that wave looked. You can tell when someone's just a creep, and when something deeper is off. I haven't been back to that playground since. I don't even drive by that area if I can help it. And every time I think about it, I get this tight feeling in my chest, like I'm back there, hearing nothing but my heartbeat and that crunch of gravel under slow, heavy steps. The weirdest part? Nothing ever came of it. No missing persons reports, no weird news stories, nothing. I even checked local forums and Reddit threads for weeks after, hoping someone else had seen something that night, but there was nothing. Like it never happened. Like it was just for me. I still don't know what I saw or what that thing wanted. But sometimes, when I'm out late and I catch a glimpse of someone walking alone, I feel that same chill crawl up my spine. And I can't help but think, what if I hadn't gotten in the car? What if I had just stayed standing there?